the underwater world of science and with the learning of what sharks do and has just accelerated tremendously in the last few years. When I was attacked in 1963, I tried to find some books on what I could learn about them to find out if they were these crazy man-eaters, that they were, you shouldn't go back in the water. Alf Dean, the world record holder for game fishing, said to me, if you had seen what I'd seen, you would never go back in. You'd hang up your gear and play golf. And I wanted to go diving. I thought it was the most wonderful sport. Every little nook and cranny you looked in was new, was pretty. There was wonderful gardens under the sea. The fish life were colourful. But of course there were the sharks. And I bought every book I could. Most of them were on game fishing. Very, very little was known. So I actually, at the zoo, when my wife and I, just after we were married, took my niece, and I was looking at the lion's cage, and I thought, they're predators and they're behind bars. Maybe I can make a cage, reverse the role, I'll get in the cage and I'll lower it into the sea and I'll have a look at these sharks to see whether or not they're as dangerous or crazy or whether I should give up diving.
So does that mean that you are in fact the pioneer of cage diving?
Absolutely, yes. It all started from my shark attack and me wanting to go back in the water.
There's a lot of regulations behind ecotourism nowadays. What about back when you started? Was it a free-for-all? You'd do whatever it was that you came up with?
There was no regulations in those days at all. The sharks were not protected, and on our first expedition ever, Alf Dean, the world record holder for game fish, with the idea that the best shark's a dead shark that's pushed forward by newspapers, we went out and he caught 5 great white sharks in a week. And it was only at the end of that trip, on about the 8th or 9th day, that I said to him, well, we've got all these sharks here, it's been a very successful trip, what are we going to do with them now? And he said, well, you guys can cut out a jaw each and we'll dump them over the side. And then I looked at the sharks and I thought, that was a pretty wasteful thing to do. We know so little about them, and they didn't seem very hard to catch. Each one only took a half an hour or so. And so it started me thinking at that particular time, I wanted to learn more and find out more about great whites.
Is that a popular misconception that white sharks are so powerful and dangerous that they're nearly impossible to catch, but in reality, they're fairly easy to catch?
I think if most people believe that it's quite true, because each of those sharks wore out fairly quickly. And of course, in those particular days, I thought Alf Dean actually had a rod and reel that was worth many thousands of dollars. It was a year's wages. They had a huge boat with a 400 horsepower motor and this great big hook with a chain and stainless steel on it. And I didn't think that that was pretty fair. I remember thinking at the time, maybe it'd be more fair if you jumped over the side with a knife in your mouth like Tarzan. You might be a fair thing, a fair fight. Not that I wanted to fight a shark at that time, but I think with the right equipment you can catch those sharks pretty easy.
But this concept of fair, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you want to give the animal a sporting chance. But there's the other type of person who just feels that everything on this earth is for ours to do with as we please. And you've probably encountered those sorts of people. What's the best reaction you can give to that sort of mentality?
I think people think humans themselves aren't gods. I think that's probably the best way to say it. Humans aren't something that have to be protected. There's a lot of us and we're overrunning the country. We're eating too many fish. We're taking over areas that we shouldn't take over. And I really think that in the ocean there's a different world, there are different laws, and we have to respect those and change our attitudes when we go in the sea.
And this is coming from someone who loved the ocean, was in the ocean all the time, had an encounter with the most feared creature on this planet. But you did your share of killing of white sharks. Was revenge part of your healing process, or could you have done without that part?
When I was attacked, the best thing I could do to go back in the water at that time was to have some protection.
Mm-hmm.
And the protection I was looking for was, first of all, the explosive power head. I worked with many people over the years to find an electronic or a shark repellent that would actually, you could put a little black box on you and you could go in the water and you wouldn't have to fear the sharks. It would keep them away. And we worked with 6 or 8 or even 10 different guys who had developed things hoping that they would work. And so our entry into the ocean is basically under different rules. The sharks actually are doing a job that our police, for one of an example, and our nurses and our doctors are doing out there. They're keeping the oceans clean. They're applying pressure to all of the fish species that might be getting in at too many numbers and stopping the collapse of the food chain.